Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's the 6th of March 2022 and we're in a perilous time. We're in a really perilous time, and I'm of a mind that a big flyby is coming in, and a shot you may have all seen recently is, we'll come back to this shot that Mr. MVB 333 posted on December the 24th, just last year, of the object from Stereo Secchi B. We're behind the Earth there. That's Venus, and that's the Sun. We don't know what this thing is. We've seen it before, charted it, but we're going to come back to that. What we're going to come to is this sighting that Planet X is here, Nibiru, Heavenly Fire, P1000, infrared, full spectrum. So he's given you a bit of information there. He's saying that, as what I'm assuming is that this is a 1,000 times magnification, as in, it's a very good bird watching lens. Kind of like your starting is about 600, isn't it, for anything worth its weight? 600. I mean, they go bigger than that. What Galileo was using was a 30 times telescope, like a bad iPhone. Like how many times does 3 go into 1, 3, 2, 3, 6, 3, 3, 9? So it's it's about 30 times more powerful than Galileo's telescope. Like I say, a good bird watching telescope, if you like. And when did we see it? We saw it on there. He posted it on the 25th of Feb, so just the end of last month, recently, 2 weeks ago about. And it was sensational. Excuse me not commenting on it until now. But honestly, I've just been blown apart because I'm expecting to see it. That's one of the twins coming in, and we know it. I've charted it for so long, telling you you're going to see this one at this time. And how many shots I just see there on the right-hand side in the feed there. How many? Area 55. I've got to be honest. I don't know if Area 55 is man or woman. And I don't think it really matters or anything else like that. But I know their partner died quite recently, and that must have been real heartfelt condolences there. But the channel's just really kind of like amazing skywatcher basically, and an amazing shot. You see all the debris. It's very reminiscent of Matt Rogers' shot on the 15th of August 2000, and that was the shot there, Matt Rogers' shot. That previous video was my last video, and I decided to redo it because it just came out a little bit crazy. But that was that last shot there, and it's a different object, believe it or not. But we're understanding a lot. We're seeing. These are more recent shots of the twin tail object, but that probably is zoomed up is the best one in this section, or maybe not the best one, but you'll have to go through it and see. I mean, there you really get to see the object in the center of it all. But that's his channel, by the way. If you want to kind of check out those videos, he's really I keep saying he, and I'm so sorry. That's just such an assumption, and but they make amazing amazing videos. Maybe it is still a very big collaboration. I want to talk about so much today. We're going to go into some big subjects, but I just wanted to show you this because this correlates. This was just posted by Brandon Corey Nagley. And he's showing another, I don't know if it's Stereo Secchi, but it's definitely, no, it can't be Stereo Secchi because Stereo Secchi kind of observes the Earth, and this is a solar observatory, but it's a stereo kind of like observatory, satellite observatory. But you can see this object coming in. Now that is the angle of an ecliptic I'm expecting. And when we saw, you know, he's also showing, you know, I think everyone's also been giving Area 55 a bit of space to get that shot out there and let him begin the process of getting it out there via his own channel and that sort of stuff, because it is just such a mesmerizing. It is just such a mesmerizing shot. That's really close. That's coming straight for us. Remember, if we just come, what was I about to flash there before you? That was the shot, you know, that we saw in December 24th. And this object is an object that I've often considered is there, but I've never seen a shot of it like this so clearly, giving its exact astronomical whereabouts so clearly. Because when we see it in the daylight sky, we're looking up. You know, this is in the southern hemisphere, and all of the twins. So I was thinking that could be the twin, one of the twins coming round, and we're seeing it from that perspective. But it just seems way too soon. It could be this one that I call in my model Europa. We'll explore the model in a shake. But when it was coming in so low, you know, our sighting, the one that we've got coming in now, this object here was the object that caused the 25th. No, it was the volcano in Iceland to go off on the 26th of February 2010. On the 27th of February 2010, we had the massive 8.8 in Chile. So north to south, we see a distinct. You know, we watch it going, but at that stage, you know, we just didn't know. We've been putting together all the shots and all the data and all the earthquakes and that sort of stuff. And then, you know, I'd started seeing this incredible 200-day pattern and started charting this whole thing. And it led me to this brick wall eventually that forced me to consider a bigger kind of non-heliocentric, non-kind of sun in the center, our sun in the center of it all model. And so we're going to explore all of this, and we're going to go in where we're going with this video is, it's going to be honest with you, this is going to be a big video. And because these are perilous times, and there's no quick way of getting through this. You know, if you go and watch a Netflix movie, you're gonna, well, Netflix is great because they just take the idea of a movie squeezed into 2 hours and they stretch it out into 11 hours and release it in. But guys, this is a massive subject, and this is a perilous time. This is a perilous time. There's no chance that NATO is attempting to try and take us into all-out war right now, and they will do everything in their power to try and where was I looking for? To try and they will do everything in their power to try and force NATO to enforce a no-fly zone over the Ukraine, which would be all the countries in NATO would be directly at war then with Russia. So that's and there's a bigger picture. There's a much bigger picture that's unfolding now with what this represents. Remember, this is only a tiny part of this big system's effect on us. This is one flyby of, you know, we've had these objects. We've had these objects. You know, I run this. Which model do I have here? I run this model here. Just this aspect of this model from 2004 to 2022. And this is only a tiny amount of the flybys that I've overlaid over this to try and give you the exact orbital mechanics behind it. Not the exact, because this is not an exact orbital astronomical model. This is still very experimental, and all of these objects, like Kerberos and Charon, the twins that are now affecting us, and this object here is one of these two objects here, and you can see that every year basically, give or take, but every year, give or take, this is when they affected us in the last point of the cycle, and then it's going to be 2022 and 2023, i.e. this year and next year, that they are going to sync up again, because these drop back 1 month every year. So they're one further, because it takes, when we go around the sun 12 times, these come in off what they're orbiting Pluto, and they come right round, and the system is so close to our sun that instead of just orbiting Pluto, they drop in and come right round our sun and then go forward to re-orbit round Pluto. And until our sun gets far enough away from the Pluto system, that will continue to continue to go on, except that right now we are so close that we haven't just got Kerberos and Charon, we've got this big blue Hydra coming in also that Galileo called Jupiter. And this is a bit of a complicated model, because we've had to, this has been updated once, and not actually directly updated on this model. I've made one big modification to this model, and now I'll make another, and we're going to explore all of that. But we're also going to bring my book Laughing Gas into this, and I just, because this is such a perilous time, I want to try and take you through the aspects of this book and why I wrote it all those years back, and show how it correlates exactly to now, and how perilous this time truly is, not just on a physical level but on a soul level right now. It's not that this would represent the time where your soul could be destroyed, but there's a massive process going on now that is a multi-dimensional battle. It's lived out in the physical world, but it extends into astral realms, and this is where the biggest invasion is occurring that we cannot see. And I've been working on trying to make a re-edit or a rehashing of Laughing Gas, and I've tried it kind of 3 times over the last little while, with this kind of promise that I was going to send a new copy to he goes by the name JDoc74, and he donated to last year, and it was an amazing help, and I thought it was going to be so much more productive. I thought I was going to relaunch the whole thing, and then twice in a row the file disappeared off my computer, and then when I tried to do it again, cursing at the sky, saying, why is this being so difficult? And then I stopped to actually listen to the answer, and the answer I got was, because you've already done it, silly. Because I'd already got it. I'd got it in my hands. I got it up on the internet. I'd shouted it out for I don't know how long, and I'd done the mission of producing it. I didn't need to reproduce it, and I realised, I've just got to send JDoc one of the original versions of this. There's not many left actually, but I want to send him one of the original versions. Like, this is an original version, because you can see that, I know it sounds small detail, but you can see that the text is evenly balanced on the pages. But when I did it via Amazon, or loaded it up via Lulu and Amazon, it came out, it wouldn't do the left and right margin kind of like thing, so you can bind it in a book. You have to do special kind, you have to set it to a book binding, which I didn't do. And so let me just read you, just to get you on the same page, just so you're fully understanding the situation that I was foreseeing. So we're just on the same page here of what's absolutely on the table here. Yeah. So sorry. So I'll read it from the computer, because I couldn't find it in the bit I was looking for. So this is just hopefully going to open up to kind of like the predicament, the literal predicament that that he dismissed what the brigadier had said about his girlfriend sleeping with another man, or so he thought, but suddenly the notion that she was sleeping with him suddenly pops into his head, and he realises that he hasn't forgotten at all, he just hadn't wanted to deal with it. And more to the point, for multiple reasons, he didn't care anymore. It had become so much bigger than that now, as for the first time in his life, it was only their sanity that mattered now. She was drinking like a fish and caning it, whilst on the other hand, had somehow inherited, while he on the other hand had somehow inherited this odd, tortured state that he was constantly having to fight off with the only weapon he knew how to use, and attempt to understand why all this toxic warring mayhem was really happening in the world, and find out if there was any way to prevent the terrible vision that he'd seen on that fateful blast of laughing gas. He was allowing his mind to go to a very worrying space, and quite possibly pushing her to the limits of herself at the same time. And he was open to that as being a real possibility. There was no blame on his side of things. To her, he'd hit a brick wall. To him, it was all humanity had hit a brick wall. At the same time, either way, they weren't able to give each other the same level of support they had when things were good. They'd known such happy times together, like when he'd lived with her and her 2 children in his truck. Their whole relationship had all been summer wine, right up to the point he started saying all the banks were about to go pop and this crazy thing was about to go down, beginning with the big boys up top beating the drum for an all-out war he knew could never be won. So this is what we're seeing starting out here. We're seeing the massive beating of drums and then the immediate crashing of the currency. A terrible war that if started, he believed in her hour of need, Britain would be deserted by our allies, and they would know that what was being done was morally wrong and indefensible, that Britain was being used as a Trojan horse by the federal government. Remember, this was conceived in 2006, published as a serial thing in 2011, and fully published as a book like this in 2012, that Britain was being used as a Trojan horse by the federal government to cripple Europe, or what really threatened the US dollar, the euro. Why he had to sit and witness the whole thing play out in a few moments at Reading Rock on a blast of nitrous seems equally insane, and yet he is completely entangled in the vectors of its emotional mass, and has his mind, or perhaps his heart, trapped in this obscure web or notion. So let's just bring that back to that image for a shape. And I'm just going to bring the doggy in, and she's going to pat around, but then she'll lie down. She's been out there for a little bit. She probably wants water. Oh! 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 Come on. Do you want a stick? Do you want a stick? Come here. What's this? Do you want to say hello to everyone? Oh! Hang on a sec. Let's say hello. This is Shanty. He's wagging her tail a little bit. Say hi. Come on in. Let's get your stick over there. Sorry, we'll just put that back over there, and hopefully we haven't messed it all up. Come on. There's your bed. There you go, sweetheart. Trying to remember my chain of thought. Ukraine, the whole thing that's playing out there. And what made me go off and write this book and try to understand understand what was the big message. And I've talked a lot about in my videos about this, the answer to this, that ultimately this is a much bigger story that's playing out a much, much bigger story. And a story that is a story that, well, I quite like reading off the screen there because it's nice and clear. So let me go to the next, because then I'm going to read a bit of the book, which is all about you and how you're going to have to deal with this situation, what's unfolding now. You know, this is happening, and it's let me just come to another bit. So here I am. Dobbs has met this lovely lady called Gatita, and she's very curandero, Amazonian woman, and she blows him away. I'll just start from here. Oh, you're more than invited, Gatita. That's to go and drink ayahuasca in the jungle. I'm almost intent on dragging you there against your will. You've got something else going on, and I'm not sure what it is, but it's very special. The sharing of these intimate stories has brought them closer, but part of him still feels he's deceiving her by hiding the fact that he's in a relationship back home. He feels cruel opening his heart to her like this and allowing her to open her heart to him, and suddenly the silence is overbearing. Dobbs knows he has to come clean. Look at it, there's something I've got to tell you. I've got a girlfriend. Immediately feels like a total idiot, ruining the moment and destroying everything. What a twat, he thinks to himself. She didn't want to hear that. Why did you tell me that? She says, hurt in her voice. Does it make you feel better to tell me you have a girlfriend somewhere else? Does that relieve your guilt? Would you rather have not known? Is that fair on you? Would you want to know if I had a boyfriend? I haven't asked you, should I? Would you care if I had? I just feel as if I have to be honest with you, that's all. I have something going on elsewhere, and I don't want to fuck you about or play games with you. Even if that means you walk out now, I still have no regrets. I'm just going to give her a little, she's licking her bowl frantically. I'm just going to give her a little bit of water. Sorry, guys. Oh no, she's got water. She's just going for food. I still have no regrets. So you do feel better, she says with distaste. He ponders on the question, looks at her and then looks away. Yeah, I guess I do. I feel honest. Do you love her? Yeah. Does she love you? She thinks I'm cuckoo, and she's having an affair with one of my mates. I guess I should have laid off the laughing gas. Look, sorry, Gatita, I'm honest, that's all. No illusion and no lies. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to fall in love with you, throw in the towel and elope to the jungles of northern Peru with you, or something mad. It just means you know what's going on, and it doesn't mean that this hand will have any difficulty getting under that sexy little top of yours either. It just means you and I know where I'm at. It just means you know where I'm at. There's a moment of silence, and he places his hand on her knee and moves it up towards her thigh, still looking at her face. Look, all I'm saying is this: given the choice, would you prefer to live the truth or live a lie? The truth is for me, the truth for me is that I have a girlfriend. The truth for me is that my girlfriend is having an affair with someone else, and meeting you has suddenly made me celebrate that rather than grieve the loss of her. But I can't do anything with you unless you're aware that technically I'm still in a relationship. Maybe that's all in the past now. I just don't know, but I do. But I don't want to lure you into any false pretenses. I want to do everything I can with you, but I also want to be absolutely honest. Is that possible? Gatita just sits there, looking Gatita just sits there looking like she's in a state of shock. But despite the fact that Dobbs feels he's probably blown his chances, strangely he still feels better about things, lighter. She looks at him like he's a total alien. Does it really change that much to have a bit of honesty, he says, spreading his hands and giving her the most winning smile. She leans back, resting her arms, and puts her legs out straight. Somehow she seems more relaxed now too, and to Dobbs' complete surprise, she just smiles. I could live with a lie. I could live a lie with you and tell you there's no one else, but it would be a lie, a deception, and I certainly wasn't expecting to find you. They both seem lighter now. Though Dobbs still feels he's blown it on some level, Gatita just looks at him and smiles. Laughing gas? You took too much laughing gas. Yeah, you know, nitrous, hippie crack, they call it at the festivals. It's the stuff they give women in labour. You lost it on that. Well, I had a vision and I saw some things I didn't want to see about 18 months ago. It took me nearly 6 months to get over all the trauma of it. Like what? She seems relieved that the subject has finally moved away from her mother and girlfriend, so Dobbs presses on with his story. It was all very short, but it seemed like it wasn't so much in my head, but more in my heart. It's kind of still there now, always like I'm a hair's breadth away from tears, somehow locked into the sadness of the world. He pauses, almost a little afraid to elaborate. If everything he's said so far hasn't blown it, drug-induced insanity probably will. Is that why you came here to drink? She says, a soft smile playing around her lips. I want to understand what I saw on that day, what I felt. It was a feeling and a whole lot of havoc around the most sadness you can ever imagine. Life-shattering sadness. I didn't understand it at the beginning because it was so crushingly intense, like I'd been destroyed. I just sat there crying my eyes out with all my mates, thinking I was being a total twat. And literally the first thing I said when I stopped crying and managed to breathe, with the pain weighing right here in my solar plexus, was all the banks are about to go down. I'm just going to finish this, sweetheart, and then we're going to go out. That was the first part of what I saw, but it was absolutely nothing to the second, which was the effect of the banks going down and what they're really orchestrating, and the feeling of loss experienced by the people. But that was utterly inconsequential to what happened last. The first was a sense of confused, almost exciting loss and bewilderment to the prospect of change, which compared to the next was the reality of that kicking in, I think, like an economic tsunami because of the way it sweeps so rapidly. It's a feeling of utter loss and desperation, and then boom! It's like a dagger being plunged into the earth itself. It was only a flash of pain, but it felt like the Titanic had just fallen on me. Whatever that was, it made everything else look like barely incidental. It was almost like one was a catalyst for another, and yet the feeling I was left with was the feeling that in that moment there wasn't a being on this earth that did not know what had just happened, and it wasn't surprise or even disappointment. It was, Gatita doesn't speak, but she's waiting to hear. Shame and the irrevocable feeling of utter loss, total and complete destruction. The only loss remained. And his eyes well up with tears as he touches that space again. I mean, it kind of looked like war starting after the bank crisis, but I can't imagine what in war could cause what I saw. It was geological, I think. It was all happening in my heart. Like when we saw the kids begging, we'd seen these kids begging at the market, and for their mother last night, begging we don't have to carry the emotional weight of that. We can see and we know it's wrong, and we can feel it's wrong, but it's not like seeing your own kids in that state. Imagine turning your head and seeing your own child right there. You couldn't emotionally disengage from that. This was like that. Like I was witnessing my own child suffer. It had bypassed all my filters. It wasn't a head fuck, it was a heart fuck. Like a knife going right through me. It was like I died there and then. For my girlfriend back home, I'd gone mad. And he ponders at the notion, and I suppose I had. Because after that big blast of nitrous, everything changed. A sadness that just came out of nowhere. Funny, I never thought I'd touch psychedelics again, and then about 6 weeks ago, Agent 6 asked me if I wanted to do a ceremony at his place. It was being organised by a Peruvian woman actually, who lives in Spain mostly now, another curandero. It was a birthday present, so I felt a bit nervous to say no, but I had to. It had taken me a year to get over that blast of nitrous. I couldn't risk going back into that pain. But then 2 days before the ceremony, I had a dream. I was cuddling a cat, a huge cat, like a leopard. It had its back to me, spooning into me as I lay there. I had one arm under the animal and the other kind of going over the top. I felt like I was spooning up to her in bliss, and then suddenly I realised that in my hands I clutched a dagger. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. But I had to, and I plunged the dagger into the animal's heart. But the blade went straight into my own heart, and I woke right back in that terrible pain I'd felt when I'd had that blast of nitrous. It was like saying to me, where the fuck do you think you can go? Whatever it was, it had me by the balls. So the next day I phoned Agent 6 and I told him what had happened and that I changed my mind. I wanted to drink. So there I was in the ceremony. I was so scared, and the curandera, this Peruvian woman, asked everyone to offer some insight into their intentions. Many of them waffled on a bit, which is okay, as it helps to hear different people's intentions, especially if there's genuine conviction. But I just said, okay, if we have to go through this change, what will it look like afterwards? And will it be worth it in the end? That's all I wanted to know. It weren't heavy like, not too hard. It weren't heavy like, like I always put so much effort into my intentions. But if I was being summoned to some point or place by something beyond myself, then what was its intentions? Were we all on the same page, And what happened? What did you see? Oh, Gatita, it's so beautiful. It was kind of like I was looking down from above, and all these kids were playing in these fields. They were dressed in this old-fashioned English sort of clothes, like Victorian perhaps, even like the indigenous wear in Guatemala, rich fabrics and so many colours and ribbons trailing off from some of the girls, just blowing in the wind as they played. I could see for miles and miles, beautiful rolling hills with all the hedgerows intact, nature's own wildlife corridors stretching off as far as the eye could see. They'd all been put back, and it was green and lush like you can't imagine. And then I heard a voice say, and you'll have visitors. Tears well up in his eyes, and I looked and I saw a huge walking tree. It was like in the form of a man, only massive, and his face was so wise and beautiful. And he trod so carefully so as not to step on any of the kids running along with his hands, trying to keep up with him as he stepped clean over the hedgerows. He was easily 30 metres high and magnificent. The kids couldn't follow and had to run up the hedgerows out of my field of vision, as even with his slow steps he was moving at massive speed. And then of all the things, a bike just bombs past me, and I realise that I'm not just floating in the sky, but I'm looking for a nearby hill. I can only get a glimpse of the rider. and his bike as he speeds past, but I can see the gears on the back wheel, and it's a really complex little assembly. And just then I hear the word technology, and I realise that we're not going backwards with this transition, that we're going to go forward and through. All this is just a blip, a big blip, but a blip nonetheless. So I'm not going to talk about, I'm going to bring it back to that image again, and just, I'm going to read you another bit of the book, which is probably the most important bit for you in this aspect, because this is really what it's all about. You see, this a much bigger process is the reason that Earth is a duality at the moment is because it's like there's an invasion happening to Earth, and at the end of this invasion there will only be one, and you will be a singularity. And my message when I presented my question to the gods via ayahuasca, what chewing? Thank you. Sorry about that, just removing sharp, chewy things from the dog's mouth. Where's your stick? Where's your stick? Here you go. There you go. What's that? Chew that. Let me read you this this bit that's really important, probably the most important bit to get you through this, because everything that's going on now, for you to be on this plane right now, to be in the third dimension, is the most powerful. It's kind of the hell realm and the heaven realm. It manufactures the heaven realm. You know, everything that, if you get to be here in the third dimension and have a body, you're blessed. You're blessed, because it means that every aspect of your existence is going to create a higher realm. You know, picture it as nothing more than a lens, and that light can be shone through that lens and projected into a higher realm. And without you being in this third dimensional state, you couldn't build. You couldn't build in higher dimensions. And this realm is powerful because it's a karmic realm. It's a karmic realm. Come here, where's your stick? Come on, we're going to go out in a shake. It's a karmic realm. And so a lot of energy is terrified of this realm because it struggles to be bad. Because when you're kind of bad or you have low vibrational energy in this realm, it comes back on you. And you can get stuck in this realm. And you can't get out of it because it's all about frequency, you know, and the higher the frequency, the closer you get to the very core of it, and the lower frequency, the further you move away from the core of it. And low vibrational frequency keeps you in this perpetual state of not going to be able to go into higher realms. But then when you are into higher realms, you want to come back here, and you still want to use this as an opportunity to come and reincarnate in. And you understand about so much more about what it is to create on a high vibration. It's all about what you're doing for others and what you're giving to others, and your generosity and your love and your expressions of love are all the fundamental architecture of going higher. And that is what is being invaded now. That is everything now at this critical point for this critical flyby, is to create, number one, the idea of an enemy. And you have to be so careful of what you're going to create in this story. And so I'm going to read you this next bit because it's more for you than you can ever realise. There you go. She's playing again now. She's just kind of excited. She's got to go out and have some fun. But I'm gonna read this bit anyway. and maybe I should try reading it from the book, if I can read it, if I can see it in enough light. I'll tell you what, I'm going to read it from the, I'm struggling to read from the book. So I'm going to go back to screen because it's a bit clearer for my eyes. Okay, the sun has not risen, but it's already bright and fresh outside. It's a spectacular morning, although still quite cold. The clarity of birdsong with little audible interference from the still sleeping city is pristine. Dobbs marvels momentarily at how the sound saturates his senses. It's so clear, so incredibly beautiful. Most of Lima is still dozing, but alarm bells are no doubt starting to ring out in bedrooms across the city, thinks Dobbs to himself, as his eyes fall on the Brigadier, looking lost and angry, alone on a sun lounger. They begin to ring in his own head. He's dangerous now. Dobbs can sense it. Closing his eyes and drawing a breath, he pictures a golden ring running around the Brigadier from left to right, then another circling from above his head, forward, and finally one exactly the same as the first, only horizontal, like a gyroscope, completely encapsulating him. Then he does the same around himself. Next he constructs a pyramid, its base formed by himself on one side and the Brigadier on the other, its apex rising above them both. He asks for unity of their souls in this higher plane, and all who work with them to come together and help bring this situation to a state of peace. He knows he has to give permission for spirit to enter this equation, as he cannot handle it on his own. His mother once said to him that choice is the mechanism of manifestation on earth, and if you want help from the higher planes, you have to ask for it. Wanting help and asking for it are not the same thing. Finally, looking at the pavement 4 stories below and acknowledging right there and right now falling off or being thrown off represents the greatest physical danger to himself. He places another golden ring around the whole edifice on which he and the Brigadier are both standing. Then he just takes a moment to absorb the whole scene, the rooftop, the sunrise, and the Brigadier silhouetted alone against the spectacular backdrop of early morning Lima sprawling beyond. He realizes he needs to tell Spirit what outcome he is trying to achieve. And what is the exact outcome I want, he asks himself. And then wonders what his mum would do. She'd say a prayer, he thinks. She'd be praying by now. Dear God, please help me solve this problem. I want a win-win situation, and all my guides, his guides, and on the higher plane that truly have his well-being at heart, as well as anyone else who can genuinely help bring love, light and peace into this situation. Please, all hands on deck. Please. Thank you, he voices in his head. Then he just maintains his space, observing the Brigadier in his sphere of utter protection and trying to feel where he's at. As he focuses, he slowly begins to sense pain. Perhaps it's the Brigadier's pain, or perhaps it's his own. In this state it's hard to differentiate, but there's an enormous sadness there, the polarized opposite of the splendor of the new day that's dawning, and the Brigadier is the only cloud on the horizon, hunched forward in absolute hell. Dobbs knows he needs to help him carry this burden for a while. He wants to break down in tears, but he knows that to do that now would only be a distraction. Instead, he tries to feel the pain with his whole being, to breathe through it. But the sadness is so intense, he can feel that also important first tear that somehow doesn't drop. It's as though it's balanced more in his breath than off the ledge of his eye, clinging like a scared child by its tiny hands of surface tension alone, scared to take that leap into the deep blue pool below that will wash away all the sadness and bring back the joy and the laughter again. But Dobbs senses that the dividing line between the tear that hangs and the sweet pool just waiting to wash away the pain is nothing but fear now, pure fear. He can feel it, see it, like a wall. Taking a breath, he steps forward, through the wall. Go on then. Pop some of that. Go on then. Pop some of those, and we'll talk, he says, attempting to keep his tone jovial. The attempt is to try and give the Brigadier Valium to bring him down off his binge on what I call pestilence, which is a bit of a metaphor in this book, and to bring him back down so he can sleep. And this like entity that had taken him whilst on this pestilence had kind of created this this situation that Dobbs is having to deal with. Dobbs wanders over to him and takes the sun lounger adjacent. Sorry man, no offence, but I don't believe you. The Brigadier opens his mouth for display, extending his tongue, and sure enough, there are the Valiums, just sat there on his dry tongue. Dobbs attempts to pass him the water, keeping himself as calm as he can whilst he does so. What are you going to do? Suck 'em? You want to get some of this down you as well. Then you won't wake with a kicking headache. Then you can just feel. Then you'll just feel fantastic. Down that whole bottle if you can. Get some fresh water in you, he says, offering the water a little closer. The Brigadier takes the water, hesitates, and swigs it back. I want to see inside your mouth, man. Sorry, dude. Sure enough, they're gone. Swallowed. Job done. Nearly. Thinks Dobbs, taking a deep breath. I tried, man. I'm tired, man. Really tired, he sighs. You promised me 5 minutes. I did promise that, and a little more maybe, right up to the point you feel like you want to sleep, and then we'll go down together, get some quality rest, and sleep this fucker off our backs. The Brigadier is not looking much concerned with what Dobbs is saying, though. He spins round, staring at him. I done my side of the deal. Now it's your turn. You got to listen and not say a word. Not a fucking word. You agree to that. Dobbs sits down next to him and makes himself comfortable. He's been in this position before with the Brigadier, but never sensed his rage directed so utterly towards him. It's like he's two completely different beings, as though his ego is in the final phase of dying and terrified is desperately reaching out one last time to get hold of something. And if something isn't found in the next 5 minutes, all will be lost. It's a state of panic, of absolute hell, as if the sadness is now a monster coming over the hill faster than the sun, an agony that no amount of pestilence can offset any longer. His ego has become a mothership of hugely inflated nonsense, beached on the shores of his sadness. It's checkmate, an all-out crash time. Dobbs senses this thing is unlikely to collapse in its own footprint, not without some serious assistance at any rate. But there's no real room for any defensive tactics, and he has no martial arts moves hidden up his sleeves. So, saying nothing, he just nods in affirmation. Me and Star are finished. We're finished, right? The Brigadier Dobbs realises is testing him, trying to make him break his word and give him an excuse for more rage. Instead, he just runs his thumb and index finger across his lips as though zipping them up, cocking his head to one side as he opens his hands out in gesture of understanding, while simultaneously shrugging his shoulders. He truly does not know the answer to that most painful of questions burning within the Brigadier's mind, but he's trying to share the pain of it nevertheless. We're finished. I told her we're through. Can't do it no more. Dobbs can see he just wants to cry his eyes out, but the whole emotional mammoth he's got hemmed up inside of him is just too massive to let go of in one big chunk. It would be like letting go of Niagara Falls, and he just doesn't know how to release that torrent. But just as it seems he's approaching the perimeter of his pain and almost shaking with effort, something else takes over, and he jumps up, staring at Dobbs, and starts pacing around him, rage in his eyes. Dobbs relaxes his body and reaffirms the golden ring of light around himself. He can feel that strange, dark energy that's taken over the Brigadier. The Brigadier looks like he wants to smash him to pieces, but Dobbs looks him full in the face, and at the same time allowing his whole body to relax away from any fear and tension. Finally the brigadier screams out in rage, running towards the wall at the front of the building. He jumps up onto it and onto the ledge on the far side, his legs dangling over the drop below. Then looking at Dobbs, he points to the space directly beside him. "Sit here," he orders, his voice so chilling that for a moment Dobbs feels the core of his bones momentarily turn to ice and involuntarily visualises them breaking like glass at the thought of falling off the drop beyond. Dobbs looks at him and shakes his head, pointing down and then drawing a finger horizontally across his throat with a half smirk, trying to make light of the brigadier's terrifying tone. "Sit here, fucking sit here now," the brigadier screams at the top of his voice. There is no way Dobbs is going to sit right next to a terminal drop with the brigadier in this state. He shakes his head, then makes a gesture with his hand in front of his mouth and points to the brigadier, telling him to keep expressing his thoughts and feelings. But the brigadier's face becomes expressionless. He turns his head slowly towards Dobbs, seething white-cold anger projecting from his piercing blue eyes, their pupils sharp as fine as pinpoints. Then abruptly he stands and, placing his feet half over the ledge, leans forward ever so slightly. Dobbs knows he has to say something. They're 4 stories up, and falling off would be almost certain death, or at the very least serious injury. It's as if the brigadier is literally leaning against the golden ring he has placed round the building. "I want you to come away from the ledge, man. Please, bro." The brigadier turns his head slowly, and as he does so, that cold sensation occurs again. Dobbs feels like he's in a horror movie. "You promised me you wouldn't speak. You're a liar. You're a fucking wanker. You just broke your word," he hisses. Dobbs is struggling to find his breath. The situation is about as much as he can emotionally handle. His knees are trembling and his fingertips are beginning to tingle. "If you jump, there's nothing I can do to stop you, man. But I can tell you that whilst you're still alive, that you have so much to live for. You can get through this," he says, appealing to the brigadier to take back control from this thing that has taken him, or that he has unwittingly given himself to. Below, a man walks on the pavement with his dog, unaware of the brigadier standing on the ledge 4 stories above him. He is the only other soul in sight as they embark on this new day. "No fucker cares if I'm gonna fucking die," the brigadier shouts out, trying to attract his attention. The man looks about discreetly, but failing to find the source of the noise, he just carries on walking, albeit with a slightly increased pace. The brigadier leans forward even more and just stares down into the abyss. If he screws this up, he's dead, and Dobbs knows it. "Please, bro, this is so cruel on all those who love you. I don't want to live with this man. I don't want to watch my friend take his life. It doesn't have to end here. You know. All this will pass, and you'll still be a young bloke with so much valuable life experience under your belt, and all your life ahead of you. This is a blip, man. Just a little rock in the highway. The masses out there, they're addicted to all the same rubbish. They just don't know it. You know the chains that bind you. You can see them now, and you can pull those shackles clean off if you've got the courage. I know you have. You're the bravest man I know, Brigadier. If you want to, man, you can just cruise past this." The brigadier stands motionless for what seems an eternity, but at last he steps away from the ledge. "I haven't got the balls to jump anyway. I'm a fucking coward," he whispers quietly, as much to himself as Dobbs. "You ain't no coward, man. Not by a long shot. Come away from the ledge and we'll talk together. You're going to start feeling sleepy soon, and everything will calm down." Then the strangest thing happens. He turns his head, cocking it to one side, and Dobbs can see it. It's back. That thing. In such a more energetic, such a more energetic fashion now, the brigadier jumps back over the wall and stands staring at Dobbs with pure murder in his eyes. Dobbs knows he's not armed, and the only danger is the drop, so he places a golden ring around the building again. His mum had taught him all these techniques, and though he knew many people would just consider them silly tricks, they, he believed, were infected with a doubt that rules their being. His mother had told him that prayer through honourable intention is what enacts a human's power to choose whether they wish to invite in help from the higher planes. She always said, you don't have to believe in miracles, but you'd be a fool not to, especially if a miracle is your last hope. Even to Dobbs, it sometimes seemed just like a load of hippie nonsense, and yet there had been times in his life when he'd really depended on these tricks, and it looked like this was certainly going to end up being on that list. You gave me your word you wouldn't talk. You gave me your fucking word, you cunt. You fucking cunt. The brigadier spits the words, almost as if they're an angry mantra he's using to convince himself that Dobbs deserved to be punished. Suddenly, he's striding around again, staring at Dobbs with his eyes of the coldest hate. Whatever it is that's taken the brigadier, it is now completely present. His head is dropped low like a predator ready to pounce, and he's now within a few feet of Dobbs and pacing in a semicircle round his golden ring of protection, which is blazing so bright it seems almost tangible. It's as though this thing has taken the brigadier, can see it too. It stops staring directly at him. Your girlfriend is fucking your best mate. The tone is seething and it's dry, like he's trying to drag Dobbs down into his hell, into the hell it inhabits. Even though he knew his girlfriend was in love with another man, and a man he loved and admired immensely too, this thought had never truly crossed his mind. I don't blame her. She's a beautiful woman. And I've been a right cunt of late. Dobbs says, not entering any anguish on his side of things. His ring of protection remains strangely solid without so much as a flicker. He holds his state, wondering whether the gold ring is really doing what it looks like he's doing, and yet continuing to hold it even as he questions it. It feels as if it's perhaps suspended on his breath, of which he's suddenly become aware now. His diaphragm feels like it's moving in almost circular, shallow cycles, juggling these rings of golden light as though juggling balls between breaths and somehow merging them, like the merging of two worlds enacting something almost alien within him. Meanwhile, he's just staring at the brigadier, holding the space in his most utter inner stillness. Suddenly, a missile of thought takes him from nowhere, and before his mind has a chance to give him the incoming alert, the thought breaks through. It could be any of your mates. Before he can detect the attack, a single syllable breaks out of his mouth. Who? As soon as the word is uttered, the brigadier comes charging straight through his ring of protection to stand staring him in the face with an expression like Dobbs must be a retard for asking such a stupid question. Closing his eyes for just a moment, he pictures his protection moving back to give him the space he craves until it extends around the building again. He can't see it now, but he trusts it's still obeying his intentions. When he opens his eyes, the brigadier is still totally in his face, but despite the terror that threatens to overwhelm, he holds still, trying to maintain his strength of intention whilst keeping his face expressionless. The brigadier makes a noise like a vampire, like he's going to bite him or something. It's almost silly. In fact, it is silly. He starts to think, and suddenly almost wants to laugh. The brigadier, sensing that his defiance to the fear immediately just turns and runs straight to the sidewall this time, almost as if standing on the very edge of Dobbs' golden ring again. The whole thing seems so stupid, like some kind of cartoon. He's standing with a lunatic on the top of a high building encircled in golden rings of light. Which is crazier, he finds himself thinking. But even though he can no longer see the rings, he can sense them, almost by the Brigadier's apparent fear of them. The Brigadier now is standing on the wall with no parapet beyond, just a 2 metre gap to the next building, with a vertical drop to the pavement far below. If he stumbles, there's a chance he could jump and get his arms over the next wall, though he'd have to leap as he fell. But right now, it isn't the Brigadier's health he's most concerned about, it's his own. "You embarrass your girlfriend," he says, his voice taunting, running along the wall on tiptoe. Like a ninja, he turns to stare at Dobbs again. Dobbs feels terrified. He wants to get away, but knows that whatever's going on, this thing is feeding off his fear. He knows he could run, but the Brigadier is ready to pounce. And what he'd do in this state is anybody's guess. He should have taken Bolivar's advice and kept well away. "Please, God, help me now. Help my friend. Please help me rise above my fear," he says in his mind. As he prays, he becomes aware of his breathing once again, and it gets easier and deeper. The Brigadier's eyes narrow with wild rage, but Dobbs is careful not to show any facial expression. He knows he must remain emotionally neutral. "I know I embarrass her. I probably embarrass you too. I haven't got a cool bone in my body. I believe in a whole load of spiritual crap that makes her cringe. The same stuff that made my old mum cringe all those years back, when she was young, before she became a channel." And then he pulls a somewhat of a dismissive face. "But you know what, bro? If she don't want me, she don't have to have me. Does she? I'll get through it. We'll all get through it. Anyway, you know me, man. Dobbs, your mate. I've always been a bit of an oddball, ain't I? Unlike you trendsetters are. If I make her cringe, let her fucking cringe." The Brigadier jumps off the wall and runs at Dobbs as though he's going to launch a full-scale violent attack, but Dobbs doesn't move a muscle. "I'm not scared of you, Brigadier. Not scared at all." He lies. "I'm your friend, and you're being a total fucking twat." He knows he has to get away from the but the Brigadier leans forward, bringing his face right up close, looking into his eyes. Dobbs tries to remember the protection he has up, but whatever has taken control of his friend is trying to penetrate it, pushing it, and violate his space with fear. Using all his willpower, Dobbs slows and regulates his breathing again, drawing the air slowly through his nostrils until he regains control. The Brigadier's face is as cold as ice, and as hard as a hatchet. He's become something he has no clue he becomes. He barely remembers anything when he's in this state, and judging by the expression on his face, he seriously wants to harm Dobbs right now. It's like he's been possessed by something demonic, which is scanning Dobbs' mind for snippets of fear. He wants to push the notion away. The Brigadier's girlfriend had talked of it and heard this monster down the phone, and he'd heard this monster down the phone once when he'd come over to his place hiding from the Brigadier, when he'd been totally sleep deprived and completely gone with pestilence abuse. The rage he'd screamed down the line then was truly terrifying. It was just before Starr had started working with Dobbs selling puppets. Suddenly he thinks of that time she'd stayed with him in the van. His mind stops there on that night. The Brigadier's eyes, staring coldly into his, almost catch something, and suddenly his whole face fills with rage. "Starr worked with you at Christmas, didn't she?" Dobbs doesn't delay for a moment, though he knows exactly where this is going. "Yeah, she did." Star had desperately needed the work. She'd had to leave the Brigadier altogether, changing her mobile number and breaking all contact to escape his torrent of desperate calls and raging anger. One night when she'd worked late and they'd all been out for a drink in the pub, she spent the night in his truck with him. Nothing had happened. She slept in the bed next to the wood burner, but the Brigadier would never believe that. Even though she and the Brigadier weren't actually together anymore, Dobbs knew it would have been totally wrong for him to get involved on just way too many levels. Star was emotionally unstable with all the abuse that she was taking at the time, and he just couldn't have gone there with her. She needed her friends, and Dobbs was a genuine friend. But not only that, he was a genuine businessman, and she was a good seller to lose over a drunken tumble. Besides, Dobbs was in a long-term relationship at the time. He tries to push all of it out of his mind, but it's like the Brigadier's peering into his thought. And she stayed in your truck one night. His whole posture is seething with hate and blame. Dobbs knows denial would be the most dangerous thing he could do now. So he has to maintain the truth and hold himself together without fear. One night she did stay. One night she did, but not in my bed. She stayed in the kids' bed next to the wood burner. When we're on the road, everyone ends up staying in my truck, or Agent Sixes at some point. It's my home, man. You know me, man. Everyone's welcome in my home. In your fucking bed. It's not a question. It's a statement. And as he watches, the Brigadier's eyes start literally rolling with rage. You really think I'd fuck your girlfriend? Is that really what you think of me? I guess you'd prefer I hadn't helped her when she was on her arse, just trying to make ends meet, just so you wouldn't feel any jealousy. Is that fair on her? Dobbs says, not raising his eyes, but speaking as assertively as he can without being antagonistic. His pose is relaxed, loose and unconfrontational, but he can see the rage moving through the Brigadier in intense shudders, literally like something growing all over him, eating him up with anger. You had sex with my girlfriend in your bed, he screams. Dobbs' eyes are locked on his. I've never had sex or slept with your girlfriend, Brigadier. She slept in the bed next to the wood burner. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it to you. I wouldn't have done it to her. She was in a total mess back then. The man she loved, the man she wanted to live out her dreams with, whose children she wanted to bear, had gone off the fucking rails. She needed a friend, not a leching wanker trying to get into her fucking knickers. The Brigadier turns and runs back to the wall and jumps onto it. Beyond is an unobstructed drop beyond to the ground. You fucking bastard, he screams. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to me and yourself? Dobbs tries to soothe him. What have I done to deserve this? I've never done anything with Star, or anything to deserve this. What is this really about anyway? You know she loves you. She's always loved you. But all the pestilence is pushing her further and further away from you. She needs a friend right now, not some wanker taking advantage of a situation. Do you think I'd risk my own relationship for that? I'm happy with Ruby. I've been with her. I have lost her. I'd have lost her over that. Maybe I've lost her already, but that would have been too low, man. I mean, you've emotionally pulverized her, haven't you? She knows it. She knows it's not really you, it's just the drugs, but she believes you can make it through this. That's why she stood by you for so long. You can make it through this. Dobbs, sensing that bringing his own girlfriend's name into things has had a slight soothing effect, so he tries to drive home the point. I love Ruby, mate. I'm not looking to jump into bed with another woman. That's why Star comes round as much as it's as much to see Ruby as me. I mean, think about it. We're quite solid, aren't we? Most of the time. The Brigadier seems almost dazed, as if it's as though he doesn't know where he is, and nearly falls backwards, but catches himself at the last moment. It seems the Valium is at last starting to kick in, but the monster inside fights back. This thing is a stubborn little fucker, Dobbs thinks to himself, as the Brigadier runs along the wall opposite to the building beyond, which has a wall at the same height as their hotel, but the property has an exposed stairwell that ascends to the roof where the outer wall is lower. The Brigadier stops, staring at the stairwell, clearly calculating the manoeuvre. It could be jump, but it's risky. Turning to Dobbs and giving the most psychotic look, he turns and leaps with his arms high and flailing like a crazed cat. Nevertheless, he lands successfully on the steps on the far building, then runs up to the roof and stands staring at Dobbs, his chest out and his arms tense like a boxer about to enter the ring. Dobbs stares back at him. He's beginning to tire of the whole saga now. He can feel the Valium as he's taken himself, properly kicking in. He finds himself wondering how the poor bloke is going to get back. Maybe it would kick in for the Brigadier over there. At least there's sun loungers he can put into the shade. He thinks to himself. Suddenly it all seems comical again, and Dobbs can feel himself about to giggle. But then the Brigadier turns and walks away from him on the far roof. Dobbs knows exactly what's about to happen, so he places his golden rings of protection to protect himself round himself and the building again, wondering when the hell this thing was going to let up. Sure enough, the Brigadier comes to a halt at the far end of the opposite roof. He turns on his heel. "You fucked my girlfriend," he screams. He screams out for the whole of Lima to hear, then starts running, approaching the far property's dividing wall. He jumps with one stride onto it, and then suddenly leaping across the divide, he lands like Spider-Man with his arms flailing, latching over the wall, but somehow he manages to use his legs to stop him rather than impacting his torso. Almost seamlessly, he springs his whole lower half over the wall, and one fluid motion breaks into a sprint towards Dobbs. Dobbs braces himself for the heavy impact, but finds the Brigadier more sort of throwing himself round him rather than smashing into him. To his surprise, he's not really hurt at all, but the Brigadier begins squeezing him tighter and tighter like a boa constrictor, all the while staring into his eyes with a look of wild hate. "Feel that?" he demands, the seething rage contorting his face into an ugly grimace. "Did you feel that? You fucked my girlfriend." Dobbs tries to remain as calm as he possibly can under the circumstances, but the hug keeps getting tighter and tighter, and he can feel the Brigadier's arm coming over his shoulder to force him into a headlock. Still, he does not resist, but the Brigadier keeps contracting his hold until it becomes a stranglehold. Then he starts edging close towards the rear wall. Dobbs slowly walks with him, trying to show no resistance, and within a few steps they are both looking over the edge. He is still doing his rings of protection, but strangely he doesn't feel panicked at all. In fact, he has to fight back a giggle. "Brigadier, all joking aside, do you really and honestly believe that I would have done that to you, to Star, to Ruby for that matter? I mean, really? And for God's sake, if I've got to die, can we at least make it in the jungle, deep in the Amazon somewhere? Far easier to get rid of bodies there as well. I mean, come on, man. Do you really honestly think I fucked her? I mean, do you really believe that? Or is this all just a need for an excuse to murder a mate?" At this, the Brigadier's grip slightly softens. As it does so, Dobbs begins to pull his head free. He does not need to force now, as it feels like the Brigadier has just given up. "You don't really, do you?" he says gently. The brigadier sways a little, loosening his grip. No, he almost whispers. His grasp is almost limp now, and Dobbs pulls his head free a little more. So shall we go and get some sleep, man? You look really tired. As the brigadier releases Dobbs, he almost falls backwards. Yeah, cool, I'm off to bed. Dobbs turns and makes his way down the spiral stairs. 5 minutes is up, huh? Whew, that was a bit of a reading. My microphone's still got power, so that was a bit of a long one. So let's come back to that shot. I've read enough, and I really, because this for me is the culminating of all these things, of what's really happening, and what's happening to humanity, and what's entering humanity now, and what's got to go down, and this whole process. And what I read you in the beginning was that this war can never happen. From a high level, that is more than understood, and I think most of you, as Einstein said, if the Third World War begins, the Fourth World War will begin with bows and arrows. The First World War started with cavalry and ended with tanks and bombers, and the Second World War began with tanks and bombers and ended with nuclear. We can understand where the Third World War will start. Its destructive capacity would be more than this little world could take. There's no way that those that created this world will let that type of thing spill out into the greater universe. It will be a terrible war that will be far-reaching from this world potentially, that which created whatever you want to call this whole complex system that we really live in, this third-dimensional reality, the provider. Will not let this go down, and this was the message I was given. And it's been a long convoluted message, and it's been in many, many different parts. And for me, it started with me getting on a plane. Writing the book started with me getting on a plane to fly to India, and I got on a plane on the day they fired up the Large Hadron Collider. And I went out with this big question, what is a Large Hadron Collider? And this thing has worked so closely with me, kind of managing my life in so many different ways, and making me go here and there and doing all these different things and living this wonderful life. Even building these boats and doing all the work into these boats, I do this because I'm aware that everything I build here is projected into a higher space, and all the people that can come onto this and share this with me and connect with my story, and connect in love with my story, whether it's just through these videos, however you want to do it. JDoc chucked some money in my bank, and I was going to really try and work this, and you know what JDoc sent me for, I'm just going to send you one of these books, because this is it. This was my message, was that actually you've done it, you don't need to relaunch that, do anything with it. The work is done. It's, the next phase is, let me just make you understand that this is, I just want to read the back of this book. Dobbs is unwittingly becoming an undercover psychic detective. And this is not just a plug. I'm going to try. It might not arrive straight away because sometimes it doesn't always work. But I'm going to try and put a drop link for the contents of this book in the description of this video. But it might not be straight away. You might have to keep checking for a couple of days. I don't feel I'm trying to get you to just go and buy it. If you make a big donation, I promise you I'm going to send you one of these. Like I'm going to send because I've only got a few left, and these were the original. Even though it says second edition, it was only because I printed one off Amazon. I didn't know that you could do it. That would all be part of the first edition. But the ones I'll send are you'll never find one that's written with first. Well, you will find one that's written from first edition when I first put it up on Lulu, and then I was just in the process of editing. But it's this book. It's just little tiny grammatical errors. But no one ever bought it or anything. There were only little copies that I had. So when it says second edition, it actually is first edition. But that's just the way it is, and you'll never find a first edition, or you might find if you rifle for my caravan. But that would probably be worth an absolute fortune. But there was only 1,000 of these ones ever printed, and all the rest were just like copies that are sent off by Amazon, which I've never got any money for, because they're going to sell brand new second hand. So that's their little loophole, so they don't give me any money. So I've never made any money out of this. you know, and JDoc74 is the largest donation that I'd ever had. He put like 7,000 quid or something into my account. So it was a massive donation early last year, and it was a massive thing. And I so appreciate that. That was just a massive that was a massive gift. It was a massive. I know I haven't done any of the things I really kind of was trying to do, and yet I've just done the very best I can. And the real message is right now is that this is now, I'm afraid, and so I'm having to deal with that directly as well, and realising that I'm out of time. That we move into this now, and that I've done my best, and I've done my equation in this. The man that I was shown in my dream, that had done nothing to try and change any of this. You know, I'm not that man. I had a choice to be someone different in this story, and I chose to live the path that I've led, and I've opened up a big labyrinth, I know, beyond this realm, in the 5th dimension, which is where many of you are from, and some of you are being invited to come, if you wish to. It's open. It's not open to specific any beings. It's a vibrational wall. You know, some of you will come in earlier. Some of you will, you know, it's just that. Yeah, I was going to read that bit, and this is a very important bit, really, because you understand that this is the end of the age, which means that there can be no karma thrown onto the next age. So you, here at this critical point, you are at a place where if there's massive exertion in karma, then a massive exertion in violence and everything else like that, there's nowhere for it to go. So you create, well, the same thing that happens in matter. You know, when matter gets so much and it finally explodes out, it creates a black hole. Our Milky Way was hydrogen going into helium, helium going up the periodic table, going much higher than iron, where our system, this system orbits, you know, what I call Pluto in this video, in my model, you know, and it's renamed every 84 years, and it's the same thing, but it's iron going into, it's basically spewing out iron. That's as far as it's got in its fusion process, like hydrogen going into helium at the beginning of the fusion process. This is at the other end of that scale. Well, not the other end, because it goes much higher. This is just the Pluto going up to iron, but you can imagine it orbits something that's much denser. Our whole Milky Way had gone right up the periodic table. It was producing iron and gold, and it was producing lead and gold and much denser materials, probably far denser than that. And when it finally reached critical mass, it exploded out, and it created a black hole in its center, and all the mass orbits that black hole. What is attempting to being done now is no different. By creating karma that cannot be settled at the end of an age, you create a karma which can only be, the karma can only explode out. The Large Hadron Collider is the karma of Europe biting the bait and being fed into this wall. And each and every one of you, many of you have picked up on the whole carbon zero story and have been dragged into this story that has allowed us to build nuclear power stations on fault lines to try and stop the carbon dioxide spewing out of volcanoes and earthquakes, or fault lines. You know, when Etna goes bang, like I say, it's 80 million tons of magma just goes shooting up into the sky and gets burnt off into carbon dioxide. This story has damaged this earth, this notion that you go out and buy a new car that consumes 100 times more fuel in its manufacture than it will ever use in its lifetime, to be some kind of green story. It's all a massive lie. It's a massive deception there to damage this earth and to bring you down so you are susceptible to lower astral invasions within your own astral body, which can connect to anywhere in the universe. You know, everyone wants to put all the invasive kind of intentions on Earth, but negative invasive intentions on Earth, are all trying to, they don't want to arrive here and land in the place where karma is at its most powerful. They want to be in realms that are above the karmic thresholds, And the fifth dimension is where all the highest aspects that are created in love converge. It is the convergence of the astral realms to create a consensual realm, not my karmic realm. It's a consensual realm where you all offer your best that you've created in the highest vibration, your highest vibrational existence on this earth. Not whole lives necessarily, but instances where your vibration goes up high enough to transfer and project into those highest realms. That's why giving is so important. And when you give to someone, you connect with their realms. So just remember that if you do feel like donating to me, and I know that sounds a bit rough to use that, but I'm desperately short of money right now, and I tell you what, if you feel like donating to me in any way, or donating to anyone, whatever you're giving out, you know, I put this all up, you know, I've earned no money out of this, and I put this all up so you can watch it free of charge. You don't have to give anything, and I expect nothing from anyone, nothing. You know, I do this for my service, and anyone who wants to connect with me in any which way they want to. Maybe it's just by watching my videos. Maybe it's just by making a comment. Maybe it's just by kind of like, however you feel you can help. I devote so much of my time to this, and I've run myself a little bit dry, I must admit, by kind of like taking on so much. But all my time seems to go into making videos and doing all this sort of stuff, and research, and just like and then when I'm not researching, I'm just kind of pulling myself to bits and just trying to juggle with the reality of what's going on. So it's a big story, it's a big thing, it's a massive thing that's going down now. It's too big to believe you're in it. It's beyond belief, it's all beyond belief, but it's all just a story being thrown over the top, and you have to be karmically so careful what you do right now. You're being led a story, and one little comment from you demonizing one side or the other in this that leads to another person thinking bad of any side within this equation that feeds this in any way. Will not be good for you. It will be perilous for you, for you will be karmically in this equation. That's why this whole tale with the Brigadier was so important about it, was because I'd gone out with him knowing full well what I was engaging with, and I'd partaken in every aspect of it, and so the story isn't an exact, I should got to say the story isn't exact, you know, I call it based on a true story, which basically means it's also a work of fiction. I just got to say that as a point there, because it is ultimately a work of fiction, because I've had to add bits and take bits away and kind of bring other aspects into the story, so it wasn't exactly a whole aspect of the truth, and bring various different things, just because I just want to just remember that it's ultimately, it is a work of fiction. I've got to say that, but the visions were, you know, you take from it what you can get from it, and you know, you will have to tread very, very carefully here. And the souls that are evolved enough to make this big jump, which is opened for you now, you're right next to this system, you're right next to the door. Everything in the power will be to try and make sure you go down in vibration, or you will become your highest aspiration in this. And they will do everything in their power to lower the vibration so they can fulfill their agenda. This is this has now gone too far that certain stages cannot be reversed now. And so there could be a miracle happen. But the people of my country would have to call out for that. And their chances of stopping this agenda now, and the opinions which they're going to start generate because of what the media is generating in them, is going to be difficult to reverse now. Lots of giving, folks. Do lots of giving. Lots and lots and lots of giving right now. Don't live in regret for all that you didn't give away and that sort of stuff. Be generous, and if not to, I'd say I don't mean to sound sort of needy in this time as well, but like I say, I don't really put out for kind of fundraisers or anything else like that. But right now, I'm just a bit anxious because everything's kind of like I'm getting down to kind of like it's all getting a bit tight, and I can't do. I'm just doing the best I can in all of this really, and you've all got to do the best you can do all of this right now. But like I say, remember everything you do on a high vibration is your highest creativity right now. That is everything for you right now. Careful where you put your energy. Don't let go of all that you have built so far. And remember the people that you know that are they're the portal people, the people that you know that if you link with them, or when you've linked with them, your link with them, they've opened up big universes to you. Try to find ways so you can look at them without feeling like you didn't offer anything back. Try to feel that you have contributed. Try to contribute. If you find yourself taking a side in this story, be careful. Be very careful. Be very, very careful. The karma of this goes way beyond this life, and it goes way beyond all the astral realms that you have created on this earth up to now. This will be the end of the astral realms on this earth. It will not be over for the astral realms, they will re-begin, but when the object, the other object, the big blue object goes past earth, that will be when a lot of souls that are destined to go there will transit to that planet, and they will begin their soul journey from that place instead of being earthbound. Doesn't mean they can't come back here, but they will be coming from a place of beautiful architecture. My soul came from that place to here. I came across in 1968 when we were right next to it. My parents also came from that system. Many of you came from that system to arrive here in these big transits that have been going on. Many of you here are to facilitate the arrival of many of the souls that are being on earth right now, to bring them across to this fifth dimensional world where you've already got you've built so much in there, all being transferred across. It's just you'll see the true. You'll not be coming back from a earth-bound. When you die, many of you go to your astral realms that are existing on the earth here, and you exist in your astral realms. And but many of those realms have been invaded, and so you've invited astral entities into those realms, and so it becomes a long, convoluted process of what you've opened up in your magnificence of being a god of realms. And that's what you are. You are a god you are gods of the multiverse beyond this realm, the earth realms of the multiverse that are connected to this earth. And like I say, the best of those are transferred to the fifth, and that's where many of you are going now, if you so choose. Many of you will get dragged into the stories of war and everything else like that, and the low vibrational fears. You have tools, and I hope in this video I've tried to show you and tried to give you some of the techniques that I've learned, and to give you some things. Like I say, there's an enormous amount of work into this. If it has any value, if any of what I have offered you has any value, try and give something. Try to connect with me in some way where you feel you have offered something you could call value. to connect with me and offer me in return for any of that. And I know that sounds like me trying to kind of earn out of that, and I guess I am, because I need money and I need all the rest of it. And so I'm having to kind of like, already I'm struggling a little bit, but it doesn't have to be much, it doesn't have to be little, just something where our realms connect beyond just, I might do something, a little background thought. I want you to do something. White Cloud calls me the doer. When I was asked to write this, I said, I know why you asked me to do this. Because you know I will do it. I may not be perfect, but I will do what you asked of me. I will complete my mission. I will fulfill my destiny. It is not my choice whether you fulfill yours on any level. But if this is just a peripheral thought and I'm just another video and you're just skipping on to the next Netflix movie or whatever, what are your intentions? Are you part of that story that's dragging this world down? Or are you connecting to something different? Is it just something going on in your back brain that's not really real, not really earthed into this world at all? So, there it is. I'm going to leave a copy in the description. It might take a few days to go up there. I'm just going to give you one last bit of astronomical, because this model, as I've often talked about, is, well, if we come to rather sorry, this model here, which is 2000 and goes from, sorry, no, it's not that one. Maybe it is that one. Yeah, it goes from 2004 to 2000 and only goes up to 2021. That one, to that big. Do you remember Brandon Corey Nagley shot on the? Well, that was 12th of December 2020. That was when it was bigger on that stage. It actually. Well, I mean that's. So this one here. This is the one, the innermost one. The next one is. So that's we're just going to go through the orbits, just in case you ever wanted to kind of like recreate this, because this is going to be probably one of my last transmissions, if I'm honest, and because I got a lot of stuff to do, because honestly I'm doubtful, very few people really chuck money in my account, and I can't be any more than what I can be in this time, so I can't promise anything. I can't promise anything other than be who I'm going to be and try to do the work that I've got to do here, whilst dealing with my own life and my own kind of anxieties with it all. And I can only just do the best I can, and I can't do any more than that. And I would never expect anyone else to do any more than that either. You know, if I'm honest, I'm very disappointed with the amount of effort overall from so many people. But I wonder how many people have looked at me and just thought, "What a total twat Dave Dobbs is." You know, has it all been a massive waste of time? Possibly, but I've done my best. But we're just going to look at all the orbits, and just as a total summary. So starting from, you know, the year 00, about the time Christ was born, sort of thing. So we're told, we have our sun with Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, and Pluto with what is effectively 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objects. Now this from here up until here is exactly 6 cycles of Earth, but 5 cycles of this object. So this object actually is bigger and it moves further away, but it moves slightly slower than this object. And so you can see when I say 5 times, you know, it basically, because they're going around this, our sun is getting further and further and further away from it until we're halfway 1,000 years, and then we're on either side, and now our sun is starting to get closer and closer and closer to it. This will go 6 times, this will go 5 times, and the orbits within this are basically. If we come over to there again, so if we come to the end, well, if we come over to what year is that? That is, if we come to this shot where we kind of 2010, where the where we are now, but but 12 years ago, when the 8.8 occurred in Chile, we can see that they're syncing up again there. They're not going to sync up again until 2022, 2023 respectively, but there's a third. So we have 1, 2, 3 objects that seem to have, when we go around the sun 12 times, they will go around 11. Europa, well, like I say, the closest one to the Pluto system will go around 13 times when we go around 12. And the big one, Hydra, which is confused because I added and took away, and I got very confused with the seismology. But actually there was a bit of confusion with Hydra because I wasn't always fully aware that so I wasn't always fully aware that this shot here by Jeff P, posted on the 14th of October 2014 sorry, 2016, what am I talking about, was actually coming in and going right round our sun. And so this has an orbit of the same as Earth, literally, same as Earth. Oh, sorry, this has an orbit where it seems to move forward. Sorry, so this is the same as the inner object around here. It seems to have the same orbital mechanic, that every year it moves 1 calendar month forward, so it goes around 13 times to every 12. So that same as that one. So that's so the same as what I'm calling Europa, the one that orbits closest to Pluto, that comes close to, obviously comes close to Earth as well, that we see. There's 5. So that's 1. This one's 2. That comes in and around. It comes so in this cycle. It didn't do that in 1939, but it's doing it now. You know, so in Carlos Rada's time during the Second World War, we were only affected by the outer 3, it seems. And then these 3, the pair and this additional one that we see, that Mr. MBB 333 posted on the 24th of December. That is the one that was. This is the anomaly. This is the one that we've seen at various different times, and it's been too difficult to calculate. Finally, this exact astronomical kind of like bearing gives us, that's not the pair, and it's not the, Europa, going the wrong way. We'd watched it go out. It's just like, this is the 5th. And so we come back to that shot here. This is the very same thing. Can you see how our sun and all its planets, this is Pluto and all its 5 planets orbiting planet X, and you can kind of see how you can see how that there's planet X, not our sun, and our sun and Pluto going round. This is their point of crossing, and you can literally see that is You know, if you zoomed right into Pluto and the sun, obviously you'd have the same thing. That's what we're seeing, and these have changed. These change from side to side when we go past the ecliptic, and they move. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this symbol that was on the same symbol that was on the skull found in Mexico. On the alien skull when they were doing the excavations, literally when I'd finally worked out this final aspects of the model. And now we have the last two bits. We have the third of the twins, which is now triplets, the trio, whatever you want to call them, and that means that that third object is actually Halley's Comet. That's the furthest orbiting one that we would have been experiencing with Halley's Comet and seeing. So I can now start working on building a new animation because I have all of the parts of this now, and we have all of the inclinations. We can see that it coming in just as predicted, and we can see the orbital angle of the other twin coming in there. And we know it's that angle, it's the exact angle I've been telling you it's going to be coming in it. But it's not quite at the ecliptic, so it's going to be above us. It's going to be stuff. We don't know what's going to happen, but it could be that we're going to see a massive same thing that happened in the Carrington event in 1859. It could be a surge of electrical stuff, and it could be enough for the banks to go down. And if they can blame it on Russia, they can start their world war and lead all of Europe into a war. It's just whether or not everyone buys it. You see, it's not whether the governments make it happen. If the governments can't make us buy it, if they can't make us hate, they cannot fulfill their agenda, because you cannot throw onto the people that which they will not tolerate. They will just rise to a power beyond their comprehension. And it's happened all throughout history. Look what happened with Chavez. All the power in the world, and they staged everything like they're staging the Ukraine with the current president. You know, a whole kind of staged coup, and all via the theatre and that sort of stuff. And it's just like, and where it failed in Chavez, I'm told it will fail here, and Britain will have, and Britain and those that are pushing this within NATO, those that are really driving this, will have to carry the full weight of this. And so it's in your hands now. What you empower, what you stand by, everything is karmic now. This is a treacherous time, and karmically you have to be so careful of what you give power to, because on a soul level you are making massive choices, and anything that feeds this planet into war is part of the problem. Whether you're just a silent consenter within all this, pretend that you have no power and you can't speak out against it, doesn't matter. You know, you, as Bill, what's his name, George Bush said, you're either with us or against us. And there's no middle road. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. As it said in my book, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Well, you know, and it's like you can't sit on the wall between these two. You know, you've got to choose your camp in this, I'm afraid. It's happening. It's now. Do what you've got to do. Be who you've got to be. Empower what you've got to empower. And ask yourself where you go at the end of this life, and what you've created, and what you'd like to happen, and what you'd like to connect with. And if you want to connect with me, remember generosity now. Generosity. Give. You give more to yourself. If you knew how much you gave to yourself when you give on a higher level, you'd have nothing left. all the love in the world. Take care through these times. Big golden rings of protection around you. Invest in the things you love. Time, energy, effort. Give, do, be. Be a human being and doing your best at this time. Do everything you can to help someone realize that there will be no winning in this war. There will only be death, destruction. Nothing good will come of it. Nothing good will come of it. These are perilous times on so many levels. Tread carefully. You are a karmic being. You are deeply embedded in the karmic rules within this realm. The energies that try to sway you one way or another, they will never pick up the guns. They expect you to do that. They expect you to do the hating, the blaming, the judging. They're Putin. Forget all the depleted uranium that our governments have dumped on all the various all of those who didn't bow to the worthless fiat-based currencies that have ruled the world under the rule of you play this game or you die. And all that wants to happen here is real value brought back to the table. That's all that's happening. Is real value is being brought back to the table. You know, when one lot are playing with just free monopoly money that they can just print off at any rate, any which way they like, to the tune of trillions, any which way. You haven't got hope in hell against that. And the world is standing up to it. And he wants a fair table. A fair even, that's what it is. An even playing ground. A fair playing ground for all countries. Good luck through this time. If you want to make a donation, please. There's a donate button there on the top of the channel, and that goes through to my PayPal account. And you know, JDoc74, there's a book coming towards you, one of the last of the original copies. So I just want to say thank you for that. And sorry, the kind of God spotting one didn't really come. It was just, I think the universe just said, look, it's enough now. It's okay. It is what it is. You know, it was more my transformation within that. It was beautiful. I spent 4 years connected to a beautiful place writing that. And hopefully that some of that will come through to you if you've got the time and the effort. Most people are going to be distracted by this, but go into the various different stories and go on the journey there. Maybe they're here to go on. And hopefully whoever you are out there watching this now, you're going to go on the divine journey that you're meant to go on. However you're going to meant to get there. But I tell you what, right now, for a lot of us, it's all about the after party now. Yeah, it's the showdown. But not many of you are going to want to stick around after this. Not those who are operating on a high vibration. You won't be necessary. What you've achieved is all the work has been done. It's all been about raising the vibration of the ego consciousness, getting it and preparing it. So when it does come in, its vibration is high enough that there is a potential for a future, for its existence on this plane. And and it will come back to the table of life and have to experience in here, even though it has another plan. But if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And if you want to meet God, text him while you're driving. So much love, lovely people. Take care. Just it's going to be one of my last transmissions for a while, because it's just such a massive effort. And I said all of this, and I just don't know how to move forward much more with it now. But good luck for it. Bring in the protection. And tell it. Tell that which you wish to work with you, what you wish to work with you, what your intentions are, what you're trying to achieve. So it can qualify whether or not it can help you, or whether it's just contributing to the problem and getting dragged into third dimensional karma. It's very difficult for energies to get involved without your invitation, but it's also very difficult for negative energies to involve without your invitation also. We consent to way more than we realise. Take care. Ciao.